Well, thank you all for joining me this afternoon for today's session, Exploring the Dynamic Security Model of CRM 2016. My name is Stacy Mancuso, and I am a CRM application specialist with WebSend Solutions. So, if you're not totally up to speed with who we are and what we do, I just want to make sure here that you guys see my screen. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So if you're not totally up to speed with who we are and what we do, we are a Silver Certified Microsoft Dynamics partner specializing in IT consulting and hosted solutions for Dynamics GP and CRM, as well as offerings for Microsoft Cloud Solutions as well. We do provide interactive online courses through our WebSend University, which allows you to choose content which is relevant to your needs while learning at your own pace and on a schedule that fits yours, of course. So, plus we have a whole slew of videos covering a variety of topics that we offer solutions for on our YouTube channel. So please take note of that address and check those out when you have some time. And of course, if you want to learn more about us, our solutions, or just want to reach out to us, check out our website or shoot us an email at the contact information I have there for you. So as we get underway here, just a quick rundown of what we are going to cover. We're going to start off here talking about business units, which I like to think of as your CRM family tree. Next up, we're going to talk about the different teams that you have in CRM. And if you're not familiar, there's two different teams you can set up. They're called owner teams and access teams. So we'll kind of break down what teams are and then the differences between these two types of teams. Next up, we'll just briefly cover using business units versus teams, what's the best model and how can you use them most effectively. Next up, we'll talk about security roles, configuring and managing them. Then we'll jump into security at the field level, and then we're just going to jump into a quick scenario where I kind of pull it all together for you. And yeah, so you'll see how it all kind of pulls together and how it looks. I have a demo user in here that we're going to tinker with a bit so you can see what it looks like when she's assigned different roles and assigned to different teams and whatnot. So now we're going to jump into our demo environment. So just bear with me here for half a second. I'm going to switch over to our CRM environment. So if you are not familiar how to get over to the security area of Dynamics CRM, you'll come up here to your little menu button here and go to Settings. And then you'll go down to Security. Do bear in mind we are in CRM 2016. If you're on an older version, and I believe CRM 2015 has it there too, but I believe in CRM 2013 it's still going to be in the admin area. But in, I believe it was in 2015, like I said, I believe the security tile came to life. So you're going to go to Settings, then Security. And then here within Security, you have all of this different functionality that you can work with. So we're going to start off here working with business units. So if you're not exactly familiar with what a business unit is, a business unit is essentially used to represent your organization's structure. So it's similar, I like to think of a business unit as building out a family tree, and then you have users associated to your business units. So your parent business unit, which is also known as your root business unit, which you see here, mine is just named CRM 2015 Demo. This root business unit is actually automatically created when my CRM environment is created. So this parent business unit is always going to be at the top of the hierarchy. Everything else will always fall below it. So you know the root business unit can never be deleted, nor can it be disabled, but you can rename it should you want to for whatever reason. And then from here, you can have child business units created beneath it, thereby creating that family tree. So just so you know, child business units are typically created or used when you have some sort of distinct, clear line of separation within your organization. So maybe you're trying to disseminate out by geography, division, department. So let's just jump in here, and we're going to actually create a few of them here, just so you can see how this all works and the hierarchy that I'm going to build. So you'll come up here and you'll go to New, and you'll just type in a name here. So I'm going to make my first one, and I'm going to name it USA. And I'm not going to go through creating all of this out. I'm just going to put in some basic information here so we can just jump through this. So my parent business unit is going to be that root business unit. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on Save and New, because I want to create another business unit below that one. So from here, I'm going to actually name this one Colorado. But for my business unit, I'm going to actually look for USA. And to just have this model make some sense so we can understand disseminating by geography, I'm just going to create a couple more here. So now we're going to name one that's Canada, and we're going to have it under our CRM demo. as the parent, and then from here we will make one that says Ontario, and we will pop that one underneath our new Canada business unit. So now let's save and close that, and I'm going to show you now what this looks like. So I'm going to sort this here by parent business unit. So you can see here we have at the top our CRM 2015 demo. And then we have our Colorado, oh, I'm sorry, our USA, which falls below our parent, and Canada, which falls below our parent. And then here we have our province and our state that fall beneath our two countries here. So that's just kind of how you build out that family tree that I was mentioning. You know, depending on your model, you may need this layered approach, or a single layer, just having that parent root business unit may just suit your requirements just fine. So again, it's just totally an internal organizational decision, just how your organization is set up and what fits your processes best. I'm actually going to jump back over here for a moment. I'm going to do something different in my webinar today where I'm going to actually go back to my PowerPoints because I feel like there's a lot of data for you to gather today. And so I just have talking points here, and I just want to pop them back up on the screen for you just to kind of do a quick recap. So again, your root business unit or parent business unit is created when you set up your environment. It cannot be deleted or disabled, but it can be renamed. Child business units are created typically when you have some sort of definable line of separation within your organization, and then users belong to these business units. So let's go back to our CRM, and we are going to talk teams now. So come up here into my command bar or my navigation. We'll go back to security, and now we're going to go here to teams. So if you did not know, there are two different types of teams, as I mentioned as we started here. You have your owner teams and you have your access teams. And we'll get into the difference between those two here as we go along. But just so you know, teams allow for the assignment or sharing of records that users would typically not have access to otherwise. Using a team model is often utilized when you have users who span multiple business units, but share some sort of logical association which would need to have some sort of cross business unit access. Sometimes when you have security roles within a business unit which are primarily restricted to user access only, teams can be super valuable. And then they're also often used in customer support situations where work is routed to a support queue which is then owned by a team. So difference between owner teams and access teams. An owner team can own records and they are assigned security roles, while access teams are not and cannot be assigned security roles, nor can they own records. Records can only be shared. So I just want to quickly make sure everybody's on the same page here, the difference between sharing and assigning. When you share a record, the owner retains ownership, and the level of access granted to that record is going to be singularly defined on a record-by-record basis. When you assign a record, that record is reassigned, and the original owner no longer owns it. And then depending on what their security role is, they may no longer have access at all. So they might completely cut themselves off from it. So kind of a valuable learning lesson. If they only have strictly user access, they might really pigeonhole themselves and learn that they have lost access to their record. So we're going to start off here, and we're going to create, first we're going to start off by creating an owner team, and then we will look at access teams. So here, I just want to make sure you saw where I went. We're in security, and I clicked on teams. So you'll come up here and you'll click on new, and you'll be given this blank form. And again, we're just going to put the bare minimum in here that we have to just to kind of plug through this. So here for our team, we're going to name this the demo team. We can decide what business unit we want to place it under. We're going to leave it under that root business unit. And I will just make myself the administrator of this. So here you see, let me click here. So team type. You see you have the choice of owner or access. You can toggle those options. For this example, we're going to click on owner. Then over here, actually, let's save this first. Once you save it, you'll see that this view or subgrid over here becomes active. So now we have our plus sign here, and I can choose some users that I want to add to my team. So I'll click on my Add User Records here, and I'll click on the magnifying glass. And I'm actually, let's see here, I'm going to choose a couple users here. We will do Natalie, and we'll have Praveen be on this team. So I'll have my two users there. We'll click on Add. And then you'll see here in a moment, they are going to be added to my subgrid. So here we are, we have our 2 users. So I do want to quickly just point out to you, if you look now in our command bar, you do have an option up here to convert this to an access team. So do know that if it's an owner team type, you can convert it to an access team. But the converse of that does not apply. So if this is an access team, it cannot be converted to an owner team. So with that, we're going to move now into access teams. And you'll understand a little bit more of what the difference is here, I think actually quite clearly right now. So if I click on New here, one would assume that this is where I'm going to want to start configuring my access team. But so you know, an access team is actually a bit more involved comparatively to get set up. So you would think you'd come in here and you'd want to click on access, but that actually is not going to give us the desired result that we want. So without going into a grave amount of detail right now and totally confusing you, I just want to point out to you that there's 2 types of access teams that can be created. A user created, which is the result I would get if I did this. This would be a user created access team. From here, I would just name it and then I can add some team members over here. The other option is an auto-created, which is the path we are going to take here today. And as I go along here, I'm hoping you're going to understand and see the difference. I'll be honest, it took me a little while to wrap my brain around this and why this access option is even here. I think it might have some sort of value, but quite frankly, the best way to set up an access team is how I'm going to present it to you today. So, with no further ado, let's dig into creating our access team. So the first thing you actually need to do when creating an access team is ensure that the the entity that you want to use access teams for is enabled for access teams. So that might have been a mouthful for me to say to you. So we're going to come here, and I actually already have my customization window open to kind of get us on our way here. So here I'm in my customization area, and I'm going to click on account to get to that metadata area where I can define some of the properties of my account entity. And let me just blow up my screen a little bit here maybe. That didn't really cooperate too well, did it? So if we scroll down here, again, on my account entity in customizations, it didn't, oh, there we go. It just took a sec to catch up. You'll see here under communication and collaboration, there's the option here for access teams. So I'm actually going to enable that here. So I'm going to click on access teams and I'm going to save it. So this is the first step. You have to enable your access team for the entity that you want to have access teams associate to. So we're going to need to save that. And then as soon as it's saved, I'm going to need to publish that as well. Alrighty, so step 2, I'm going to need to get this published, and hopefully this catches up with me here. Alright, so hopefully, let's just see if this publishes quickly for me. Okay, well, I think while this is publishing in the background, we might be able to tinker and do some other things here. It looks like it actually finally caught up. So we're going to come back here. Again, we're in settings and security. So the next step is actually we need to create an access team template. So we're going to come here. We're going to click on access team template. And essentially what we're doing is we are going to define what privileges will be granted to teams or granted to the individuals associated with my access team. So the first thing we're going to want to do here is name it appropriately. So I'm going to name it my account services team. And I'm actually going to define it as read-only. I do want to mention to you, you can have multiple access team templates per entity. So we might have one, as you see here, read only, and then another one that might be like read write permission, for instance. Just so you know, right out of the box, there is a limit of 2 access teams per entity. And I believe if you're on CRM Online, you are limited to that. But if you are on-prem, some configuration changes can be made should you need additional team templates per entity. So again, important to define this appropriately so you can distinguish it from others. Then here you'll have to come and choose your entity. And being that that published, we now see our account entity here, enabling us to create a template against our account. So then here we're going to define what our access rights are. So I'm actually just going to define it as read. And now we're going to click on Save and Close. Like I mentioned, it's kind of a lengthier process, but we'll get there. So the next step is you actually have to now add a subgrid to your account entity form. So here we go, back to our customizations, and we'll go to Forms. And open our main account form that we're going to work with here. And hopefully if you're on the call today and you're looking at security, you're familiar with customization and what I'm doing right now in terms of customizing my form. So I'm just going to pop it down here somewhere. Let's just see. I'll just click down here somewhere, and we're going to insert a new tab. So it popped in down here, and now I'm going to click on Subgrid. So if you're familiar with putting subgrids into your forms, I'm going to warn you, pay super close attention to how I'm going to build this, because it's actually really unusual compared to most other subgrids that you've had to build prior to this. So here in Records, you're going to choose all record types. For your entity, you're going to choose your user entity. For your default view, you're going to go up and choose Associated Record Team Members. And then here in the team template, we're going to choose the team template that we created. We only have one, so that is our only option. But I do want to point out here, as you see, I'm having to choose one. So if you do have multiple templates, you do have to create separate subgrids for each of them. You can't combine them into one in any way. So you'll have to add each subgrid separately. And so that's why it's going to be super important that the naming of your template and the naming of your subgrid are super clear and descriptive to ensure that they're used appropriately when users are within that user interface. So let me just come up here, and I'm going to just quickly name this for us. All right, and we'll display that label on our form, and we'll click on Set. And just so this looks a little prettier when we get in there, let's just remove that so we don't see the word tab there on our. So let me just save that. And publish it. Alrighty, so now let's save and close out of here and minimize that. And I just want to quickly show you now how it works when you're within the user interface. So we'll go here to Accounts. And they'll just open up any of these. It doesn't really quite matter. And hopefully I don't need to do a quick refresh here on my screen. Hopefully that it picked up that new grid that I've added. There we go. Okay, so here's that new account service team read-only grid that I have added. So any user or end user with share privileges can now perform the function I'm going to show you. So they'll come here, they can click on the plus sign, and then they can choose a user that they want to share this record with. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on Medea. So it's going to add Medea in here. So now Medea is actually going to have, this record is going to be shared with her, and she's only going to be provided with a read-only access. So now, this is the fun part. Once this has occurred, so once that very first user has been added to an access team, the access team has now been created. But here's an interesting fun fact. Access teams are not shown in any views, and this is actually, I had to do some research on this, but this is actually purposely done by design by Microsoft because it is basically assumed that manual administration of these access teams is not going to be required. But should you want to see them, you can easily do that by coming up here and doing an advanced find. Hope I don't make you dizzy. Come down here, go to Teams, and then for your team type equals, you're going to come in here and we're going to change this from owner to access. All right, so now we're going to see our results. So this is the new access team that was just created. And so you know, for each record that has an access team associated to it, a new access team record is created for it. And the name is actually populated with the GUID of the record to which it is linked. So it's kind of this odd, obscure number. You can come in here and obviously put a description in here like it applies to blah, blah, blah account. But just so you know, that's basically how that works. And it's, like I said, it's assumed that this is not going to be manually administered. So this is the functionality, but you can look at it should you want to. And if you wanted to, you can actually add team members at this point from this view as well, and they'll start stacking up here in my account. So we're going to pop out of there. So if you're anything like me, you might be scratching your head thinking, why would I go through all this trouble of creating access teams? Why wouldn't I just use that share command that's in my view? So the share command that's up here. So if you click on any of these items up here, you'll see there's an option up here to share. So the question is, why would you not just do that? So although they're obviously very similar, the main advantage with access team templates is permissions are just universally defined. You don't have to decide on a case-by-case or record-by-record basis what you're going to give people access to. Also, as you saw, you have that subgrid on each entity record. So it just kind of gives you it allows you to more readily see which users have been granted access to that record. So I just want to quickly touch back now to that user-created access team. So just so you know, if you go that route, you would, as you saw, you would set it up with specific users associated to an access team, but no specific access is going to be specified. So you're kind of back in the same boat as you are here with sharing, where you decide on a record-by-record basis. And also the drawback with that one is, even though it's an access team, you can't add a subgrid. It doesn't apply in that situation. It only works with those auto-created type access teams. So jumping back to our slides here quickly, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown here. I'm not going to go through all of these in full, but just so you know, as an umbrella statement, teams allow for the assignment of sharing of records which users would not otherwise have access to. An owner team allows multiple users to own a record and also allows for the extension of access or assignment of rights to users outside the scope of their current role. Access teams, on the other hand, provide the flexibility to create and dissolve teams as needed versus needing a pretty clear game plan right out of the gates, as you typically do with owner teams. You have to have a pretty good idea of what you're doing when you're setting up owner teams right out of the gates. And I'm just going to kind of skirt around security roles here because we're going to look at those here shortly, but being owner teams require security roles and access teams don't. By using access teams, you kind of avoid the complexity of balancing out how one security role may positively or negatively in your situation affect other security roles. As we discussed, access teams come in two flavors: auto-created, where privileges are predetermined but people are not, and user-created, where people are predetermined but privileges are not. Not going to go through these, but just so you see visually, this is how you set up an access team. And just a quick word of caution here for you if you're using these access team templates. If you change the privileges on an access team template, only newly added users will inherit those new access rights. Users that already were associated will retain their original access. So it's really important that you know that ahead of time, because I think it really could trip people up if not understanding why some people have access and other people do not, if they're all part of that same access team. So business units versus teams. I'm actually going to keep this pretty simple because it's really an organizational decision that takes some weighing out. But Just, if your business model requires a very defined, clear-cut division, whether it be geography or operations, then multiple business units, as we saw with that hierarchy, may really be your best bet. And then you can, of course, incorporate in the use of teams, as I mentioned, to share records across those business units as required. If, on the other hand, your model allows for the use of one business unit, but you still require some element of security, which allows for the expansion of user access privileges, just outside the scope of a user's typical assigned role, then just, using teams may just fit the bill, and you don't need to get into the craziness of creating business units and moving people here, there, and everywhere. So, you really just need to weigh out what works best for your specific organization, and and go from there. So back to CRM we go, and now we are going to talk about security roles. So again, back to settings and security. And here we have security roles. So just quickly, security roles are going to define a user's access and their privileges to the entities and basically the inner workings of CRM. So all users must be assigned a security role to access a dynamic CRM environment. And also a user can have more than one security role, and they can also belong to teams which can have more than one security role. And just to point out, the greater access is always going to win. And we're going to actually look at that in a situation here as we go along. So again, just to remind you, users and teams require a security role. So just keep that in mind as you go. So if you're familiar with this whole security role area here in CRM, you'll know that there's a whole handful of out-of-the-box roles that come with your CRM. And I would say the mass majority of what you see here are ones that came out of the box. There's a few here that are custom ones, but most of these are just right out of the box. You can simply use these just as they are, but it may be necessary to customize them to suit your requirements. So it's best not to modify these existing security roles. It's really considered best practice that they just simply be used as a template, and that way you always have them to refer back to. But the really cool thing is you can come here, for instance, and click on, I'm going to choose the salesperson one here, click on and tick off this check mark, come up here to more actions and click on copy role. And I'm actually just going to name this one my salesperson demo role. And I'm actually not going to open this right now because I'm going to actually create another one very quickly that we're going to actually use a little bit later on here in our session, but I want to just create it right now just to make sure it's done. So we're just going to create one more real quick here, and we'll just name that I'm not very original, I apologize. So we'll name this one our team demo role. So we'll just wait for that. And that's actually just going to copy over all of the permissions, access, privileges, everything associated. So now we're going to come here and we're going to open up that salesperson demo role, the one we just created, which is basically a duplicate of the salesperson role that comes out of the box. So here you have your various tabs. And these are just going to break down the entities and the functions into a logical way as they relate to CRM. So we're just going to start off here in our core records, but as you click through here, you'll see you have various entities as they relate to the specific functional areas of CRM. And your core records are those that pretty much apply to all of your entities in one way or another. So we're going to start off here talking about access and privileges. Access, which is shown here in this key at the bottom, this is going to actually define the structural level or depth at which a user can work with data in the environment. So you'll notice that this color coding is applicable up here. So here we have user. So if it's kind of just like a quarter pie chart in yellow, that's going to signify a user access. A full green is signifying an organization. So let's just quickly go through what these all mean. So if none is selected, so if it's completely blank as this one is, that just basically means the user cannot perform that action, period, on that entity. If it's set at user level, that means the user can perform the action on records he owns. If it's set at business unit, the user can perform the action on records only within the business unit he is associated to. Parent-child allows the user to perform the action on any record within his business unit and anything that's a child of his business unit. And then organization is basically a free-for-all. It allows the user to perform the action on any record within the organization. Next up, we have privileges. So you have, this is just describing the permissionable action a user is afforded. So whether they can create records, whether they're able to read, open and read existing records, whether they're able to modify existing records, delete existing records. Append allows you to append entity records to another record. And append to is appending another entity record to a current entity record. Now that's kind of a mouthful and it kind of makes no sense in my opinion just looking at it. So I just wanted to share with you, I stumbled upon a really great way to make sense of these last two, append and append to. So basically append knocks on the door, the append record knocks on the door of the append to record and essentially says, hey, can I come in and hang out with you? So that's basically what it is. Append and append to work hand in hand with each other. So you just need to ensure that the two entities that you're working with together have these related privileges associated. And then next up, we have assign and share. So this essentially allows your user to assign and share records with other users or teams. So let's just quickly talk through the configuration here. So yeah, as you see, my user, if assigned this role, they can only, based on this configuration here, they can create their own records. They can read and write, append and append to and share, all organizational level. And then again, user access is limited to just delete and assign. Do want to point out you can actually toggle these permissions. So if you wanted to tinker with these a little bit and change up the permission, you can come up here, and if you come really close to where the entity is, as you see, as I'm clicking here, it's putting them all in sync with each other. So now they're all set at organization. I'm actually going to set them all to user level. So now they're all set to user level, and I'm just going to change this read access one to business unit. So now it's a half, and so it's setting it to the business unit. So with this combo, my user will be able to view all records that are within his business unit, but all other privileges are just limited to the ones that he owns. Just want to quickly mention here custom entities. It's really super important to always ensure that when you're setting up your security roles that you cover your custom entities, because it's actually a really common question I get is, why can't my users see this new entity I created? So just ensure that you are giving your users access. And again, you can easily toggle these. So here, I can toggle it this way, and you can also toggle it in this direction as well. So as long as you're clicking on here or you're clicking very close to where these entity names are, that's how you can basically toggle vertically and horizontally just to kind of fill them all out at once and make the process a little bit quicker for you. So we are just gonna, let's see here. Let's just make these all go away. And hopefully I don't mess myself up too badly by doing what I just did, because I'm not sure if some of those actually had a function associated with them. Alrighty. So now back here at security roles, I just want to mention here, you have your child business units up here now. So if your child business units have been created, they're going to inherit the roles of their parent. So we'll just go here to USA, for instance. You're going to see the exact same roles here that you saw in that parent business unit. So here's that new one I created, salesperson demo role. So child business units inherit the roles of their parent, but what you're going to notice is they can't be modified. So if you come on here, you're going to see inherited roles cannot be updated or modified. You can simply just look at them. Just want you to know you can create custom roles at the child level, but it's really not best practice. And inheritance is recommended. Just that way you can manage it all at one central location and one level. So we're going to go back here to our security. So you can actually manage user and team roles directly from a view in your command bar, and we're actually going to do it for our team entity here. So here's that new demo team we created. So you can come over here and you can click on it, and you can click on Manage Roles. And from here, you can decide what role you want to assign. So in this case, we're going to assign them the team demo role. Just be aware that this only adds roles. It does not remove existing assigned roles. So you can only add roles here. But this is actually a really super great way, to choose several users or several teams at once and just mass assign them a new role that you've created. I'm actually going to zip back here. I know I'm getting a little tight on time here. I get a little long-winded sometimes and excited about my topic, so I apologize for that, but hopefully you're learning a lot and gaining something from all of this. So I put my talking points up there for you. I'm just going to quickly give you a little bit of information here. So user teams and owner teams must be assigned a security role, and as I've mentioned, each can have more than one role, and the least restrictive access is going to win out. So when you're configuring security, access is going to be the depth at which a user can work, so all the way from no access to organizational. And then privileges are going to just define that permissionable action a user is afforded. So read, create, write, so on and so forth. So I just want to assure that it's really understood now that the permissions selected for an entity apply to all records of that entity. And field level security is not managed through security roles whatsoever. Rather, they are managed through field security being enabled on specific fields for an entity, and then through field security profiles, which now takes us into our next topic. And I really love field security, so I'm excited about this. So here we're going to come back and we're going to go back to security once more. And actually, we're not going to security. We need to go actually to our customizations. And we're going to come here to our fields. So first thing we need to do is enable field security for a specific field. So for whatever fields I want to enable security for, I'm going to navigate to that field. So whether you do it through the field node here or you look for the field on your form and do it through there, either way, same thing is going to happen. So let's look here, and I want to actually do it on my credit limit fields. And I'm sorry if I make you dizzy. So here we're going to do it on our credit limit field. So here you'll see field security. I'm going to click on enable, and I'm going to click on save and close. And while that is thinking, I'm going to publish it. I want to tell you that by definition, when field security is enabled, users are automatically blocked out from that field unless they have an admin security role. So essentially what I've done just now is well, let's just pretend that I'm the only admin right now in the CRM environment that I'm in. Anybody else in my environment now that's going to go into the account record, they are not going to be able to see that credit limit field. They'll see the field there, but there'll be nothing there for them to see. It'll just be blocked out with asterisks. So again, once you enable field security, everyone's automatically blocked out unless they have the admin security role. So then access is granted. So the access granted now will determine what the user does or does not see, and then their ability to work with that data. So that's now going to take me into field security profiles, which is here also. And we got to go all the way down to the bottom here. And here we go, field security profiles. So I just want to point out as this is coming up here, the only reason you're going to want to create a field security profile is to actually give access rights. Because again, by default, all users other than admins are now going to be automatically blocked out. So they're not even given read access. They're given no access. They'll just see asterisks, which I will demonstrate for you here in a minute with my test user. So in here, we're going to click on New, and we're going to create a new security profile. I'm going to create a couple here because I'm going to show you the difference that my user is going to have. And I'm going to click on Save. So here I'm going to choose my users. So who do I want to be included here? Oops. And let's try and spell his name correctly. That would help. So we're going to add Praveen here as our user. And then down here, we're going to go to field permissions. Now don't get overwhelmed, because what's actually going to happen is every field security profile created is going to display every field in the system that has been enabled for field security. So it's really important that you name each profile as applicable and then define access only for those fields which this particular profile is going to apply to. Thankfully for us, it is this credit limit field that we're working with right now. So we're just going to define here what amount of access we want to give Praveen. We are actually only going to give him read access, which means when he goes in there, he can see it, but that field is just going to be locked out for him. He won't be able to take any further action on it. So we're going to click on OK. And I'll have to circle back to that here in a minute. It might be because based on the privileges that Raheem has on records, he might not actually have the ability to even see that. That might actually be why that gave me that error. So let's just create another one quickly here. We'll save that one. And we're going to add, we'll just do the field permissions on this one quickly too. And I might actually run into the same issue here where the users I've actually decided I wanted to use, they might not actually have enough access to even see these records. Or it might not have updated. That might be the other issue I'm having right now. Okay. Well, I'm going to circle back to this here in a moment, but I might have to go back and look at my security roles for these individuals, and hopefully when I go to my demo user that we're going to use, I can actually fix it with her by tweaking her security role some for us. So I'm just going to kind of plug along here and come back here to my PowerPoint real quick just to do a quick recap of field security. So you're going to first of all enable field specific to your entity for field security. When enabled, any user other than an admin is locked out from that field until access is given to them. And as you saw just a moment ago, it also has a lot to do with security roles. So I probably should have checked into that a little bit more, who I was choosing as my users and what their roles were. And then lastly here, you're going to create field security profiles to define the varying levels of access and associate those to users and associate those users or teams to the profile. So now I believe we can just exit right out of here, and we're going to run through a quick scenario just to kind of pull this all together for you. So let me switch screens here, and I'm going to pull up my, let's see here, I want to make sure you see Stacy here. All right, so here, this is my test user, and if we come here to sales, and we go to accounts, you will see that Stacy sees a lot of active accounts, and this is my test user, so she just has very limited access. And if I come up here to my active account, you'll see the one account that this test Stacy user owns. So she has one active account. So now here, as the administrator, I'm going to come in and I'm going to go to users. And I'm going to change the business unit that Test Stacy is associated to. So I'm going to click here next to Test Stacy, and I'm going to change her business unit to Colorado. And then the next thing I'm actually going to do is we're going to tweak one of these security roles here. That salesperson demo role that we created earlier. So we'll come here to sales, core records. And I'm actually going to change these all to business unit access. And let's see. And we're going to save and close that. So now we're going to go back to our Stacy, our test Stacy. And being Stacy moved business units, she no longer has any security roles associated to her. So keep that in mind. So now here I'm in my Test Stacy user account, and if I click on Manage Roles, when you do it from within your user record, you can see what's assigned to them, and you can see now, being she moved business unit, she no longer has a security role associated to her. So just keep that in mind. If you move users, you need to ensure that you assign them some security roles after the fact. So we're going to give her that salesperson demo role. And I actually need to give her this North 52 formula manager. This is a custom entity that we have in the system, and without her having privileges to that, she's actually not going to be able to do much in the system. So we're going to click on OK here. So Stacy now has these new, a new business unit and new security role. So we're going to come back here, and we're going to refresh. And we're going to see what Stacy now sees. So she still sees her active account, but if I've done this all properly, if we go to active accounts, she now only sees hers. And that is because no one else in her business unit has any records to speak of. She's the only person that's now in this business unit because, as you know, we just set it up. So now when we go to active accounts, you see the only thing she's going to see, based on that security role we associated her to and the fact that she's in this new business unit, is ones that only relate to her particular business unit. So the next thing I want to do here, so you can understand a little bit more about how the teams work, is we're going to come back here to our environment. We're going to go to security. We'll go to teams, and we're going to add Stacy to that demo team. Okay, so we have our new test Stacy here, and she's added to that demo team. And let's just confirm what her security, that demo test, that team demo role gives her. So she should be able to create, read, write, delete, do all of these things. Let's just amp this up a little bit. We're actually going to give this role full access. So let's click on Save and Close. And then we're going to go back and refresh Stacy and see what she can see now. So now if we go to Stacy and we click on the refresh button, you're going to see now she sees all of these active accounts. Because based on the fact that she belongs to that team now, she has full access. So we're going to come up here to this first record, Taylor Industries. And you'll see she has, she'll not only have read-only privileges, she'll have full modify privileges as well. So she can come in here and do whatever she wants. You will notice, though, this is a field that has been enabled for field security. So you'll see it is marked with a key, which indicates it's field security enabled. And you'll also see it's marked out with asterisks. And if you come down here, our credit limit field looks the exact same way. So now we'll go back in here. And we're going to try this field security profile again and see if I can get it working properly the way I wanted it to before. So we're going to try adding that team in here and see if that would. Okay, so now they're given read access. So if I come back to Stacy and I refresh this screen, we should see that credit limit field actually show the value for her. So now you see, if there was actually a value there, that's totally my bad. If there was a value there, you can see that it would actually show up now. If you remember previously, like this one, it would have asterisks in it. So now it's actually just a blank field. If we went back in and let's see, you're save and close. We did the sales management, and we added that team in there. So I think I just showed you all a valuable lesson that's really important, that you ensure that your users have the proper security roles. Because there's a lot of fail-safes in here, so you can't really give people permission if they're really not allowed to have it. So it's probably a good thing that we kind of stumbled upon that little error that I made. So now we'll go back to Stacy again. And if we refresh this, I should actually be able now not only see the credit limit field, but actually type in it. And there we go. You can type whatever I want in there and save it. So that really kind of takes me full circle with all of this, covering business units, security roles, teams, field security profiles. So I'm just going to kind of wrap it up here. I'm going to check in the question panel, see if anything has come in. So let's just switch our little view here to our Q&A view. And I'm going to take a quick peek here to see if anybody has any questions for me. I'm hoping everybody gained a lot out of today's session. I know it was a lot to cover. Unless I see anything pop up, I'm just going to kind of chatter at you for a moment. If you're not familiar, we also put a lot of blogs up on our website. And what I typically like to do is after I run these webinars, I always typically write a blog that somehow associates to it. So if you don't have any questions right off the bat right now, check out the blog. I put other content into the blog that I don't cover in the webinar, kind of more finite detail. And then, of course, as I mentioned previously, if you have any questions, you can always, reach out to us, through our website or, throwing us out an email. And, we'd be happy to, look at any questions that you might have, get back to you, help you out in any way that we possibly can.